Man, I love it when we have to talk about commanders who have very, very easy lore. So this is Henzi Toolbox Tour, a Jund commander who is going to make us get all of the free things, or at least all the discounted things, throughout our games of Magic. So if you want to know about this guy's lore, it's very, very simple. This is a guy who says that he's part of the Riveteers, which is one of the 5 crime families on New Capenna. He says he's part of them, and he moves construction materials for them, but he probably steals like half of the stuff he actually messes with. He was told by his wife that she wanted a new wedding gown, so he went and stole her a wedding gown, but he kind of stole his wife's engagement ring back away from her as payment for it. So needless to say, those guys aren't getting married. The most important thing about Henzi, though, more than anything, is that him and the Riveteers beat the ever-loving crap out of Atraxa by dropping a building on her during the invasion of New Phyrexia. So apparently he's also pretty up to snuff on New Capenna's building codes and exactly how many of them can be exploited to kill basically Magic the Gathering's the board. But anywho, let's talk about Henzi and what he does. Each creature spell you cast with mana value 4 or greater gets Blitz. Now, what is Blitz? Blitz means that the card will kill itself at the end of the turn, and you get to draw a card. However, Henzi discounts the card that you have by 1 mana for every time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. This means that unlike most commanders, Henzi actually wants to be directly involved in combat and get himself killed a few times throughout the game. He wants to be put in a situation where you've cast him at least 3 times, which means, yeah, he's going to cost you a lot of mana when you play him, but now most of your deck is going to be played for almost the cost of free. So our strategy is going to be to not only play some of the biggest creatures in Magic the Gathering and benefit from their deaths, but also to make sure that we are getting lots and lots of draw power off that. We get some draw power, obviously, off of letting Henzi do his thing, but we would like to have more draw power than that so that we can always have a nice and freshly squeezed hand filled with all kinds of good stuff. So the first problem with Henzi is making sure that you have all 3 colors, and in a budget deck, that's going to be a bit harder to accomplish than in other games. Henzi does not want to come out after any of your plays, he wants to come out as soon as possible, so we've got a mixed bag on in terms of ramp. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 10-card ramp package, starting with Scampering Surveyor. Now, this is one of those cards that is not going to come out before Henzi, usually, but Henzi will discount this thing sometimes down to 0. When it enters the battlefield, grab any land from your basic land from your deck, put it on the battlefield. Solemn Simulacrum, same thing, and also Solemn Simulacrum says when it dies you can draw a card, so you get to do a double draw off of Henzi. But the cards that you're going to cast before Henzi are going to be Arcane Signet to get a mana of any color, Rampant Growth and Edge of Autumn to get any basic land from your deck, Search for Tomorrow to get any basic land from your deck untapped, or you can just play it on turn 1 for suspend cost, Farhaven Elf, which can get any basic land from your deck, and Wood Elf, which can get any land that has Forest in its name from your deck onto the battlefield. We're also running Command Sphere, which we can sacrifice to draw a card later in the game once Henzi's discounting us a lot, but primarily it's here to make sure that we are guaranteed via colorless means to get the mana type that we want. And then once we have Henzi online, we have Agnus the Dragon's Lash. Anytime a creature we control with haste attacks, create a tapped treasure token. Now, it should be known that if you blitz a creature out onto the board, it does gain haste. So basically our entire deck has haste while Henzi is out and doing its thing. So Agnus will almost always create treasures for us, which means we'll always have mana to pay for Henzi later in the game when he gets killed a few times or dies to incremental board wipes, or if we kill him ourselves so that we can make sure that our stuff is discounted more. This will give us the treasures we need to make sure that everything is working in our favor. But what creatures are we going to be trying to play in this deck? Well, let's take a look at the 20-card deep removal and interaction section. That's right, we are going to be sacrificing our own cards all game, so we need to make sure that every single card in our deck is pulling its weight in making sure our opponents are losing lots and lots of cards. So let's start with the Batter Horn. When it enters the battlefield, destroy an artifact. It costs 4, so it's going to get discounted by our commander. And then we have the Indrik Stomp Howler. Blow up an artifact or enchantment when it enters the battlefield. It has the same cost and near the same stat line as the Batter Horn did. And then, of course, it's my channel, so we're going to be discounting Meteor Golems, guys. We're going to be playing Meteor Golems on a budget. Can you believe it? We're putting Meteor Golem in the deck, everybody. We're going to discount Meteor Golem down and then swing at it with haste and draw off of it. Any deck that can I think my problem in Magic the Gathering is every deck I want to play abuses Meteor Golem and nothing else. I think that's like literally the criteria for if I will enjoy a Magic the Gathering deck. Then we have Conclave Naturalist, which can blow up an artifact or enchantment, and is also a 4/4 for 5, which is going to be a 4 mana cost creature with Henzi, who will draw us a card, or a 3 mana cost creature, or a 2 mana cost creature, depending on how discounted Henzi is. Then we have the Sawblade Slinger. It's a 4 mana 4/3. When it ETBs, we can either blow up an artifact someone controls, or we can make it fight a zombie an opponent controls. We're probably never going to use that zombie one, let's be honest. We're mainly using this so we can come out and blow up our opponent's Mana Crypt. Because, honestly, they brought Mana Crypt and we brought a $15 deck. They deserve to lose it. Then we have Slum Reaper, a Fleshbag Marauder clone that also costs 4 mana, so we can actually discount this thing down with Henzi and then get a draw for it when it automatically sacrifices itself. It makes everybody sack a creature, which is also cool. Then we have Necrotol. It's got First Strike, and if it comes into play, blow up a non-artifact, non-black creature. So the important part here is it's a 4 mana creature that lets us blow up another creature on the board. It's got First Strike, so it can swing at people and do funny stuff, but 9 times out of 10, this mainly is here so we can go and blow up more things. Rex Sage is another way to blow up creature, any artifact or enchantment on the board. Then we have Woodfall Primus, which can blow up any non-creature permanent and has Persist. So what this means for us is we're going to pay a discounted rate on this card. It normally costs 8, probably going to cost us 7 or 6. Blow up a non-creature permanent, and then it's going to automatically die to the Blitz ability after it swings. So it's going to come back with a -1 counter and just blow up another card for free. So we're going to get double duty off of this all the time. And then we have Prismari Eliminator. When it enters the battlefield, we can either destroy a creature or make every creature a player controls get -2/-2. We can tell the token player to fuck off and stop putting so many cards on the board, or we can tell one person that their commander needs to die, basically. And it costs 5, so we're discounting that down with the commander. Then we have Patron of the Vein. When it enters the battlefield, blow up any creature our opponent controls. And then if a creature an opponent controls dies, we can exile it and put a vampire on each creature that we control. So we can let this sit on the board as a stacks piece against reanimation players, but it also acts as another way to blow up cards on the board primarily. Butcher of Malakir, anytime a creature we control dies, each opponent sacks a creature. So if our deck is doing what it's basically going to do all the time, Butcher of Malakir will make everybody sack all their stuff. Then we have Shriekmaw, a creature that has Fear. When it enters the battlefield, blow up a non-artifact, non-token creature, or non-black creature. It can also be evoked if we really want to, but again, 9 times out of 10, we're just going to be summoning we're just going to be summoning it with Henzi's ability, because Henzi is going to make us all of the cheap creatures. Dalek Drone lets us blow up a creature, make an opponent lose 3 life. Ravenous Chupacabra blows up a creature when it comes out. Overseer of the Damned blows up a creature when it comes out, and then makes us tap zombie creature tokens as we do. Plaguecrafter makes everybody sack a creature when it comes out. Noxious Gearholt blows up a creature and gives us life when it comes out. Tarasta Dawn is huge and kills 3 non-creature permanents. This can include land, so we can get rid of things like Maze of Ith or Glacial Chasm or, Maze's End. And, of course, it is a big 9/9 honking elephant that's going to have haste because it's coming in with Blitz. And then no deck that wants to spam out huge creatures is complete if you're not running a Warstorm Surge with it. Every single creature we summon in this deck is going to get not only discounted, but it's going to be pulling triple duty. It's going to draw us a card, it's going to have haste, it's going to blow up something, and then Warstorm Surge is going to make it deal damage equal to its power to any target. That can be players, we can burn players to death with this. That can be creatures, we can use this to snipe commanders or other important game pieces from other people. Honestly, Warstorm Surge does a lot of work in this deck, and it's very, very nice. But since we're going to be losing our creatures all the time, how are we going to get them back? Well, I'm glad you asked. We have a recursion section as well. Let's start with Gravedigger. When it enters the battlefield, we can return a creature card from our graveyard to our hand. It's a 4-mana creature, so it's going to get discounted with Henzi and get us stuff back. Ashnod's Intervention also can get any creature that we have that dies back to our hand. Baloth Null can also get 2 creature cards from our graveyard back to our hand, and again, it's big mana, so it's going to get discounted with Henzi. And Tumor Exarch, when it enters the battlefield, we can either return a creature from our graveyard to our hand, or make an opponent reveal their hand, and we can blow up a card from it. So if we know our opponent has tutored up a combo piece, this is a way to interact with that combo before it happens. We can also use this as another way to get things out of our graveyard to our hand. Then we have Farika's Mender. When it enters the battlefield, return any creature or enchantment from our graveyard to our hand. If our opponents get rid of our Warstorm Surge, this gives us the ability to get it back. Gorix the Tomb Shell. When it enters the battle, when you cast it, you can make it cost 2 less for every card you exile from your graveyard, and whenever it attacks or dies, which, mind you, it's going to do both of those the turn it comes out, choose a card at random exiled with it and put it in your hand. So what we're going to do with this card is we are going to knock its cost down by 4 using its ability, which is going to make it a 4-cost creature. Then we're going to knock its cost down by 1 or 2 more with Henzi, making it a 2-cost creature. It's going to come into play, swing at somebody as a 4/4 Death Touch. They're probably going to take it because who wants to block a Death Toucher? And then we are going to get both of the cards it exiled to our hand immediately. Then we have Deadly Brew. We make everybody sack a creature, and if we sacked one on the way, then we get another creature from our any permanent card, rather, from our graveyard to our hand. Play this before your turn ends to get maximum value off of your creatures. Then we have Rise of the Witch King. Every player sacrifices a creature, and if you sacked one this way, return another permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield for free. This is our first Reanimation card, but it is by no means the last, because we have a 9-card Reanimation package as well. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Demonic Gifts, return to action, supernatural stamina, infuse with vitality, and fake your own death are all basically the same card. It makes a creature have the ability that if it dies, it comes back onto the board immediately with some other benefit, either making us a treasure token, or giving it a 1/1 counter, or giving us life. Basically, these will make sure our creatures are not just pulling double duty, but they're going to stick around for the long haul and give us lots and lots of procs of their ability. Then Phyrexian Delver, when it comes into the board, we get to reanimate a creature and lose life equal to its value. It costs 5, so of course, we're going to be discounting this with Henzi. Young Necromancer costs 5 as well, so it's going to get the Henzi discount. Whenever it comes into play, exile 2 cards from our graveyard, and then return any creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. That is going to be super helpful for us. And then the last 2 cards, though, are absolute bangers. We need to talk about Riveteer's Ascendancy. Every time we sack a creature, we can get any creature card with lesser mana value from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped, and we can do this only once per turn. We're really only casting 1 or 2 creatures a turn, generally speaking anyway. So this card is going to keep our board nice and healthy and flooded with creatures that get to stick around for the long haul and hurt people a fark ton. And then we have the big boy, the thing that's going to cause mass mayhem and havoc. This is Bringer of the Last Gift. If we cast it, each player sacks every creature they control, and then each player returns all creature cards from their graveyard back to the battlefield. However, we are the creature deck, and most of our creatures have some way of blowing up a card when they come out, so likely if we play Bringer of the Last Gift, we are going to be the only ones with any actual benefit on the board at all. Also, a fun combo to think about. If Bringer of the Last Gift is cast, and we have Butcher of Malakir on the board already, we can discount them both and get them out on the same turn, or what have you. Butcher of Malakir's triggers happen when we choose. So here's what's going to happen. Bringer of Last Gift comes out, we sack all of our creatures, Butcher of Malakir goes on the stack and says, I'm going to make my opponent sacrifice 5 creatures, say. But Bringer of the Last Gift has to resolve, so we get all of our creatures onto the board, and our opponents get all their creatures onto the board too. And then they all die to Butcher of Malakir's trigger, irrespective of what creatures we pull out. I mentioned that this is a funny play. You should ask your judge about how it works when I did my Savra video, but honestly, it's a funny play, and you should ask your judge how it works, because the way it layers up is hilarious. But I mentioned it's really important to get the right mana when playing Henzi. If we don't have the right mana early, then we might not be able to play Henzi, and that might actually hurt us quite a bit. So we actually have some mana fixers over and above our ramp cards in the deck that we need to talk about. They are our land selection area, and then of course we have an area that's just called It's Just Atali. Because honestly, this is the kind of deck that begs for Atali. If you don't put an Atali in your Henzi deck, I'm curious about what you're doing. Itali says when it enters the battlefield, exile the top card of everybody's library. You can cast those cards for free, and of course, Itali is going to get an attack trigger the minute it comes out, because we're just going to be summoning it with Henzi's discount. But the way we're going to be getting our lands in the deck is we have 3 cards that give us land selection, and they happen to all be big creatures that can be brought back with Bringer of the Last Gift, or they can be brought out with Henzi's ability late in the game. But if it's early in the game, Valley Ranit, Ingenious Pouncer, and Oliphant all serve us very, very well. Oliphant, we can pay 1 mana and discard it to get any mountain from our deck, and that counts any kind of mountain at all, not just basic mountains. Ingenious Pouncer has swamp cycling and mountain cycling, and the Valley Ranit has mountain cycling and forest cycling. So between all of these, we should be able to get all of the cards in our deck. They're very important pieces for us to manage to win. We need to get Henzi online as soon as possible, so we want to have things over and above our ramp package that are selecting the correct lands for us. Because Henzi's Blitz trigger gives us incremental draw throughout the game, we have a smaller draw package than I would normally be comfortable with, but it's kind of fine because, again, we are playing Henzi. He is our incremental draw throughout most of the game, but let's look at the draw package we have here. Garrett's Pack Leader says anytime a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield, we draw a card. That is most of our deck. Garrick's Uprising, if a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield, again, most of our deck, we draw a card, and it gives all of our creatures trample. It also draws us a card if a power level 4 creature is already out, which is interesting and helpful. But primarily, this is just going to be the thing that makes all our haste creatures have trample and draws cards. Death Reap Ritual, every time our creature dies, we draw a card once per turn. Again, doubling up on that Blitz draw. Moldavine Reclamation, every time a creature on our side dies, we gain a life and draw a card, tripling up on those Blitz triggers. Then Midnight Reaper and Grim Harespec say if a non-token creature we control dies, draw a card, and then for Midnight Reaper, it makes us lose a life. The most important thing here is every time one of our creatures dies, we are going to be drawing more than 1 card. We're not just replacing the things that we lose, we're getting through our deck quicker and quicker and quicker. Now, the last 2 areas we need to talk about, the last 2 important pieces, are our sack outlets and our board wipes. So let's go ahead and look at our sack outlets. We have Dreg Recycler. We can sack an artifact or creature to make every opponent lose a life and we gain a life. We can use the Bushmeat Poacher to sack a creature and gain life equal to its toughness and then draw a card. This is another way to triple down on our Blitz stuff. Then we have the Gnawing Zombie, sack a creature, target a player, loses a life, and you gain a life. And then we have the Vermin Gorger that can sack another creature so that each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. These are ways to make sure that our board is kept clear if we had to hard cast any of our cards. These are ways to make sure that we can force Henzi to be a card that costs us more and more, which makes all of our cards cost less and less. These are also cards that will allow us, if our opponent tries to do something like exile our entire board, we can just start sacking our board to our sack outlets so that they stay in our graveyard where they are nice and comfy to be used for things like Bringer of the Last Gift. The last 2 cards in the deck outside of the land base, though, as I mentioned, are our board wipes. We have Find and Finality. We can use its Find side to get 2 target creature cards from our graveyard to our hand, or we can use the Finality side to put 2/1/1 counters on a creature and then give everything -4/-4 after that. This will make Henzi survive a board wipe after it happens, and most of our deck is big enough to survive Finality anyway. And then we have Deathbringer Regent, a 7-mana creature that if we cast it from our hand, and there are 5 or more other creatures on the battlefield, we just blow up all the creatures. So we're going to discount this with Henzi, and then it's going to blow up Henzi, so that Henzi can discount all of our cards even more, while setting all of our opponents back and making sure that we are not going to be losing the game anytime soon. Deathbringer Regent is a house when cast correctly. But now we need to talk about the land section. And the land section is honestly a bit more complicated than I normally would play, but it's kind of important for the type of deck we are playing. So we have Promising Vein and Shire Terrace, Terramorphic Expanse, Myriad Landscape, and Naya Panorama, and Jund Panorama, Grixis Panorama as well. These are all lands that are going to be able to sack themselves, as well as Evolving Wilds, to grab any land that we need out of our deck. Any of our basic lands that we are missing, we will be able to get. I've also made the exception that I normally wouldn't run. I don't like temples in most of my decks, but we are running a full temple suite of Temple of Abandon, Temple of Malady as well, and Temple of Malice. The reason we are running these is the Scry 1 is actually helpful with all the incremental draw we are doing, and it is that important to make sure that Henzi is online as fast as possible. We are willing to run a couple tap lands if it means that we are able to get the correct colors for Henzi. Then we have Cinderglade and Smoldering Marsh and Haunted Mire as one each of our lands that are able to be searched with our Forest Grabbers or our Mountain Cyclers, all of our land cyclers basically, because all of these lands are either come into play tapped or tango versions of searchable, fetchable lands. They have land types, so even if they come into play tapped, they are still giving us perfect mana fixing, and that is worth the come into play tapped that they do. Don't run too many tap lands in your deck. Only run a couple. We are only running 4 actual tap lands outside of like Myriad Landscape in this deck right now. Well, 5 actually, I forgot. We are actually also running Path of Ancestry. It can add a mana of any color in our commander's identity. The other text on the card doesn't matter. It may come into play tapped, but again, I have to stress it is that important in Henzi to get him online as fast as possible. Then we have Command Tower and Exotic Orchard as Omni lands. These are lands that will allow us to get basically any type of land that we need. And I'm sorry, there's a 7th tapped land in this deck. We are that desperate to get Henzi online as fast as possible. Savage Lands comes into play tapped, but it can tap for Jund mana, and as we are a Jund deck, Jund mana is a little important. Then we have 7 forests, 6 swamps, and 4 mountains, and the reason that we have that specific amount is because when you look at the deck spread, it is 64 swamp, 39% forest, and 14% mountain. We tend to still run a few more forests, though, because we want to make sure that when we are running our deck, we have access to that early green ramp. Even when you have more cards with more pips in other colors, if you need early green for things like Farhaven Elves, Search for Tomorrow, Rampant Growth, you still want to stack the green part of your deck a little higher to make sure that you are guaranteed to hit those ramp spells. But that is Henzi. We are going to be making sure that he comes out as early as possible so that he can discount the biggest cards in Magic, just all of these 6 to 8 mana costing big behemoths, and all of them tend to have some type of removal effect on them. So we're punching people in the throat with these giant creatures all the time, while also clearing their boards out so that we always have clear access to our opponents. And then, you know, things like Warstorm Surge are going to allow us to burn people as we go through that. Henzi is a fun as hell deck. He is one of those commanders that I didn't want to build because I don't like building just every commander that comes out of a precon. And then I caved. I had to cave. I built my first Henzi deck like a year ago, and holy crap, this was one of the most fun commanders I ever played. So he is a perfect commander for the $15 challenge. He makes up 83 cents of a $15 deck. We are running a $15.39 in total commander deck. So we are right there on the edge of that lovely, lovely number. So we are running a very budget deck that, as per usual, is not going to feel like a budget deck because you're going to be spitting out some of the biggest, bulkiest creatures in Magic for a super hyper discount, and we're going to be drawing so many cards that it's going to look like we are playing a deck with a well-oiled engine that normally costs people 20 or 30 bucks. We don't have to spend that kind of money, though. We just need to select our cards better. Anyways, let me know what you guys think of Henzi. If you've built your own Henzi deck, I know he's a super popular commander. A lot of people really enjoy him. He is one of my favorites as well. He is an absolute house when you build him and give him upgrades like Archon of Cruelty. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And as always, everybody, thank you all for helping the channel get to partner. Holy crap, I am excited to see where this project is going to go. Thank you for watching. I appreciate every one of you. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here. And they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Nabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.